Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I am the Chair of Scarborough Community Council. We have quorum. Welcome. I am now calling meeting number 15 to order. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person here at the Scarborough Civic Centre in the Council Chamber. This meeting is also being live streamed at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. For the land acknowledgement, on behalf of my colleagues and city staff, I would like to say that although we may be meeting in different locations today, Community Council would like to acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also would like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. We do have a speakers list for today. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on our list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting Scarborough Community Council page at toronto.ca/council and clicking on the speakers box for today's meeting. And just a reminder for my colleagues, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your electronic devices. I also want to remind you to please submit your motions by email. Staff are available at scc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our last meeting on June 12th, 2024? Moved by Councillor Mantis. All in favor? That carries. I'm now going to go through the agenda. Our first item is SC 15.1, 3291 Kingston Road and 2 and 4 Windy Ridge Drive rental housing demolition application. This is a decision report for approval in Ward 20. Councillor Candival? Approval? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Candival is approving. Oh, sorry. Those are speakers? My apologies. Speakers for item number 1. Sorry. SC 15.2, 27 and 29, Parkcrest Drive, official planning amendment and zoning amendment decision report for approval in Ward 20. I'm going to hold this. There's 2 registered speakers. SC 15.3, 565, Kennedy Road, official planning zoning bylaw amendment decision report for approval. We do have a registered speaker, Greg Ewens. Is Mr. Ewens here? Sorry, Mr. Ewens. Councillor Candival was saying that he'd like to defer this until the September meeting. So you could speak on this today or wait until September. If you speak on the deferral, you can't speak again in September. Why not until September? Today? Okay. All right. So I'll hold that one down. SC 15.4, 114 Marcos Boulevard, application to remove a private tree in Ward 21. Councillor Thompson?
I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Thompson's moving the staff recommendations in SC 15.4. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.5, 19 Felicity Drive, application to remove a private tree in Ward 24. We have 1 registered speaker, so I will hold that. SC 15.6, sorry, there's a stapler in the way. Watson Street, traffic calming, speed humps. Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did a poll and there was 90% favorability, and I will move staff recommendations.
Okay. Yep. All in favor of staff recommendations? Carried. SC 15.7, Atlee Avenue, traffic calming speed humps in Ward 20. Councillor Candival? Moving staff recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.8, Charlottetown Boulevard, traffic calming speed humps in Ward 25. Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to defer this item so we have time to do the poll on the street.
Okay. Councillor Kelvy has an amendment to defer this until our September meeting. Any questions of the mover? All in favor? That carries. SC 15.9, Hill Crescent, traffic calming or speed humps in Ward 24. That's my ward. I'm going to move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.10, Van Allen Road, traffic calming speed humps, Ward 24. Once again, that's in my ward. I'm going to move the staff recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.11, Stephenvale Drive, traffic calming speed humps, Ward 24. Once again, my ward. I'm going to move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.12, Oak Meadow Boulevard, parking amendments, Ward 24. My ward. I'm going to move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.13, Stephenvale Drive and Van Allen Road, always stop control in Ward 24. I'm going to move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.14, McNichol Avenue at Markham Road, U-turn prohibition in Ward 23. Councillor Myers?
Move staff recommendation, please.
Councillor Myers is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.15, 1161 Kingston Road, construction staging area in Ward 20. Councillor Cannavale?
Chair, I've sent the clerk an amendment.
Okay. Just quick.
Yes, we're changing the October 31st date to, I just sent it to September 30th. Yeah, sorry, Nancy. We can hold it.
You want to hold it? Sure. SC 15.16, St. Clair Avenue, road alteration in Ward 20. Councillor Cannavale?
Move staff recommendation.
Councillor Cannavale is moving staff recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.17, Pegasus Trail, traffic calming speed humps in Ward 24. That's my ward. I'll move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. SC 15.18, Hupfield Drive, no U-turn signs in Ward 25. Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation
All right.
for
Councillor
the
McKelvey is moving
U-turn
the recommendations.
prohibition.
All in favor? That carries. SC 15.19, Scottfield Drive, increasing traffic safety in Ward 23. Councillor Myers?
I'd like to move recommendations, but can I say something very briefly?
Sure.
So I just want to say thank you first to Dan Clement, who helped make this happen. And of course, thank you to the residents of Yeehong, who came up with the ideas for traffic calming measures, set up a community meeting to decide what they wanted, to listen to some of the different options available, and who really were the driving force behind this. So thank you to the residents for taking the initiative to make your own community safe. I think it's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Myers. All in favor of the recommendations? That carries. SC 15.20, 1990 Ellesmere Road, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes in Ward 24. I'll move the recommendations. All in favor? That carries. Sorry? Okay. The next one we're adding is new business. Thank you, Nancy. SC 15.21 in Ward 23, enabling driveway use and road safety on Dunmail Drive. Submitted by Councillor Myers. All in favor of adding this to the agenda? Can we move the recommendation? All in favor? And that carries. All right, we are going back to item number 1, SC 15.1, 3291 Kingston Road and 2 and 4 Windy Ridge Drive, rental housing demolition application. Decision report for approval. Our first speaker is Paul Nedozitsko. My apologies. And just to remind everybody addressing Community Council, you have up to 5 minutes to make your presentation. We individual as counselors can ask you questions individually for up to 5 minutes. Then we bring it back into committee where we can ask questions of staff individually for up to 5 minutes on the item. And then finally, we can each speak for up to 5 minutes on the item and move any motions and then vote. So, Mr. Nedodoisko, am I getting closer? You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
I realize the decision's already been made on this file. Okay. I'll start over. I realize the decision's been made on this file, but I still like to express my opinion. Good day, councillors and city staff. My name is Paul Nadashotko. I'm a 40-year homeowner at 50 Martindale Road in the Cliffcrest neighborhood of Scarborough Southwest. I am also an individual who made a decent living in the housing and land development industry for over 30 years. I'm a former City of Scarborough design and construction inspector, former contracts administrator for the Cernus Group, and a former project coordinator for the Caitlin Group. I consider myself well-versed and adequately qualified to speak on matters of housing and the various development models, practices and models taking place in our city. First off, I want to qualify my comments by stating that responsible development, which aligns itself with provincial policy and provides housing to establish and maintain well-balanced, mixed-income communities, is a good thing. In addition, new home starts has been and continues to be critical to driving our country's economic engines. On the other hand, predatory development practices which seek out desperate landlords and displace vulnerable tenants from their homes and neighborhoods are not only exploitive, but they are predacious and destructive in nature and often destroy lives, and this nonsense needs to come to an end. Not only should predatory development practices be stopped dead in its tracks, but if we continue to allow developers to influence policy and decision, which allows all our new and existing housing inventories to be treated as asset classes, only to be traded on the global stock market, then we are truly in trouble as a city and a society. And the writing of this destructive influencing is already on the walls. Predatory development only serves the best interests of the developer. And my understanding is that upwards of 10,000 current tenants in Toronto are now faced with being displaced from their homes and neighborhoods within the next 2 years, thanks to predatory developers who have targeted alleged undervalued properties in efforts to transition once affordable rental dwellings and/or land into dwelling units for the more affluent people of society. It is also my understanding that there are now 12 affordable rental apartment buildings which have been acquired by predatory developers along the Kingston Road corridor of Scarborough Southwest. It is my further understanding that these acquisitions will result in the demolition of precious rental housing stock, which is being destroyed 10 times faster than it is being replaced. These predatory acquisitions are making way for investor-driven condo developments. The intentional targeting of vulnerable and marginalized tenants within certain neighborhoods and efforts to displace them from their homes is nothing less than a predacious, discriminatory, and prejudicial development practice based on socioeconomic status and is a violation of human rights. and the right to adequate housing. This self-serving development practice, which puts profits ahead of people in the housing need, is beyond concerning and continues to cause incredible angst for thousands of vulnerable seniors, low-wage income earners, and particularly those with mobility issues who rely on ODSP. Let's also not forget there are many people who struggle daily with depression and the debilitating effects of mental and emotional distress. This makes it very difficult for them to hold secure and stable employment. The last thing these people need is the added pressure of having to secure stable housing tenure in a marketplace that the majority of us can no longer afford. It takes courage to be a true leader, and I believe it's time for Toronto to be a global leader on the housing file. It is time to put the best interests of tenants ahead of the interests of predacious developers. The United Nations and our federal and provincial human rights
Sorry,
commission.
sir, to interrupt, but could you wrap up, please? You're over your 5 minutes.
One last sentence.
Sorry?
One last sentence, please.
Okay.
It takes courage to be a true leader, and I believe it's time for Toronto to be a global leader on the housing file. It is time to put the best interests of tenants ahead of the interests of predacious developers. The United Nations and our federal and provincial human rights commission think so too, and so says Toronto's housing charter. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions for the deputant? Councillor Candeville?
Thank you, Paul, for your timely, valuable insight into the reality of the housing conversation and form of development. The challenge I've realized in this role is the governing framework from the province. What do you, to your points, what do you think is the city's, how should a city determine its relationship with its provincial governing body?
I'm sorry, can you?
Yeah, I'll repeat. As in this role, I've learned the impact the province has on setting guidelines and policies that inform our own growth in the city. And this has been a tension that has resulted in these
Right.
unfair dem evictions.
Yeah.
What do you feel, how should this, us as a city of Toronto,
Well,
react to the province?
I mean, it's no secret that the province keeps changing things and how the Planning Act is written almost by the minute. And it's hard for planning staff to keep track on all these changes. But basically, you know, provincial policy states that all new development must support mixed income communities. And that's not happening. We see all these development applications. There's no range of price point. You know, we had a motion, Toronto City Council passed a motion to adopt inclusionary zoning, where it compels developers to build their projects, but include affordable mixed-range units with different price points. Well, Mr. Ford took care of that and destroyed it all. So now we're back to square one. You know, I just think we need to change how we view housing in the city, and it's beyond concerning when I see companies like Dream Developments that all their asset class are traded on the stock exchange, 4 different stock exchanges. This is single-family detached homes. This is multiplex builds even. This is rental apartment buildings. Housing in Toronto is now being treated as an asset class. And it's you know, there's lots of pros and cons to both sides. It's great for the pension funds, but for the people that are struggling to make ends meet in this city, not so much. And you know, I hear from our elected representatives that we're a city for all people, we're an inclusive city. But the reality is, more and more people are leaving Toronto. And I think the net migration in 2022 was minus 70,000, where 70,000 more people left Toronto than came into it. That's concerning. Because what that means, not everybody can be a doctor or a lawyer. We're going to have people that have jobs that make $30,000, $40,000 a year. They provide essential services for, you know, whatever the industry may be. We need those people to live in our city. But they're having to move further and further away. We're adding to the problem of congestion, and it's compounding everything. So, you know, and when we look at the housing spectrum, I think there needs to be a more comprehensive approach. We can't just look at things from different silos. You know, I had a discussion with a meeting with Emily Irvine, and I thank her for that. She took the time to meet with us at Metro Hall. And, you know, I realize that every department has their mandate, they have a job to do. And they're limited in their capacity as what they can and can't say, okay? Being a former City of Scarborough employee, I understand all about that. I'm just saying, if, you know, Toronto, I grew up here. I'm proud of my city. Am I so proud of it today when I see what's going on? Honestly, not so much. You know, it concerns me.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Our next deputant is Maria Tandick. Morning, Ms. Tandick. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Marina Tadens, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Cliffcrest Scarborough Village Southwest Residents Association. The ERA is an incorporated not-for-profit association that works with other like-minded organizations in Scarborough and believes that development should take place in such a way that it not only is in the best interest of developers, but also desirable and in the best interests of the neighborhood and environment. The staff report states that the OLT has approved the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application. However, the OLT has only approved the application in principle, and several conditions still need to be met. These conditions include, among other things, revised stormwater, hydrological, and traffic reports. The RA had the opportunity to meet with the engineering team, and we are still waiting for their responses to concerns raised. Recently, I had the opportunity to meet with several of the tenants who live in the affordable units at 3291 Kingston Road, which city staff want you to approve for demolition today. Sharon, one of the tenants who is here today, showed me her garden. She showed me her home. She also shared her worries about what is to come. What will happen in the meantime when she is forced to move out of her home? In the meantime are the words I ask you to pay attention to as I continue. According to CBC News story last month, the city and the province say displaced tenants have a right to return to their units at similar prices once redevelopment is complete, and renters are offered financial assistance to pay market rents. In the meantime, but those living in buildings that are at risk are still worried about being priced out of their neighborhoods. The report continues. Demevictions have been steadily rising in Toronto this decade. According to data from the city's own website, in 2020, 9 properties were approved for demolition and replacement. In 2023, the number more than doubled to 24. During the process, the owner consults with the interim chief planner and the executive director and city planning to develop a tenant relocation and assistance plan. It seems the tenants have no say in the matter. In the meantime, of course, they are worried as they wait for the relocation package. and in the meantime, the state of the rental market becomes more challenging. The tenants must move out of their affordable homes within the time frame that has been decided for them and compete with other tenants in the city looking for affordable housing. Andrew Crosby, a postdoctoral researcher at Carleton University, said, even though more supply is being added, the actual existing affordable units, the housing stock is depleting rapidly. And it is because of these types of initiatives by developers to demolish existing affordable buildings. At a time when there is a crisis for affordable housing, why is the city considering demolitions of the little affordable housing we have left? Given today's market, when condo developments in the GTA are going into receivership, what assurances, councillors, can you give in the meantime to these tenants that they will return in 3 years? It seems quite clear that the housing crisis is more about type of housing than lack of supply, and I am confident to say that there should be no rush for this unaffordable housing development to start. But there is a reason to pause or stop this demolition, so in the meantime, we can be sure of next steps. Councillors, you have the ability to offer some certainty by refusing to issue a demolition permit until at least these studies and conditions imposed by the OLT are met. This will remove some unknowns and give some assurances that the development will have a timely completion, facilitating a speedy and successful return of tenants to their homes. Councillors, are you aware that more than 100 concerned residents attended the community consultation for this application? 32 participant letters listing many concerns were submitted to the OLT for this development. The city planning submitted comments to the applicant in February of 2022. The applicant took no action and gave no indication that they were able or willing to resolve the issues. Some of these concerns are part of the OLT studies and conditions. The revised reports going to city solicitor before the OLT issues a final order must be completed and evaluated, not only as a sustainability lens, but also with compassion. We ask Scarborough Community Council to defer or deny this demolition application. Before every city, a land acknowledgement is solemnly read, but many decisions are made without consideration of the Indigenous teachings, such as the Haudenosaunee 7 Generations Principle, which says, the decisions we make today should result in sustainable world 7 generations in the future. In the meantime, we ask ourselves, what type of a legacy are we? Tomorrow's ancestors creating for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are any questions of the deputant? Councillor Candaval?
Thank you, Marina, for your deputation. Much appreciated. For clarity for us, council and of course staff as well, the conditions, I think there's 6 that came out of the OLT decision. What were the ones that you, just for clarity for everyone, the ones that are outstanding that the community would like to see clear staff responses to those conditions?
Yeah, so the transportation report is one that we've been asking for since the application was submitted. And it's our understanding that a revised report was submitted to the city staff for review, but it's not complete. And what I've been told is it will be reviewed during the zoning approval. The OLT conditions state that these reports should be completed, and our terms of settlement indicate that we as an RA and a party are able to review these reports before the application is approved at the OLT, but the reports aren't ready. So that's one of the conditions that have not been met. The Hydro G, we asked for the cumulative impact. We haven't received a response from the city teams on that as well, so we're waiting for that response. So, and there were more studies that we asked for that weren't part of the OLT, and unfortunately, the RA can't ask for more than that because we don't have the money to hire experts to bring those kind of challenges to the city.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Kenneville. Other questions of the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Taddick.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now go to questions of staff. Does anybody have any questions of staff? Councillor Kenneville?
Thank you, Chair. Before us is the rental housing demolition approval. One of the concerns when my office and I started this year was the treatment and the services provided to the tenants. To staff, can you walk community council through the efforts that were made since January to address some of the outstanding concerns with certain tenants?
Good morning. Emily Irvine here from SEPA. Through you, Mr. Chair, from January, we had a follow-up tenant meeting. We had a previous one in November of 2023. We had a follow-up meeting in January of 2024, where tenants attended, the applicant attended, and some of the issues were raised. The issues being the right to return, maintenance issues, and longstanding issues with the applicant. Since then, we've had ongoing conversations with both tenants and the applicant to try and bring these issues to resolution. I understand that some of the matters have, and there are some smaller matters that are outstanding and remain.
Can you speak to the extent that staff and our office was able to address issues that were, for example, there was a tenant who had been relocated, but upon further review, it became clear where we had to change the agreement to bring in residents who were relocated previously who still had the right to return?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Following a community council meeting in June, staff met with staff from your office as well and tenants to go through their remaining questions and concerns. And one of the matters that was raised at this meeting was for the one tenant who had been relocated off-site and was very interested in coming back on site. He's still an eligible tenant. He remains an eligible tenant, but the councillor staff have been working with the applicant to ensure that he returns. I understand that that return is intended in the next couple of weeks to address some administrative matters regarding the move, but I understand that those matters, staff has been working to try and resolve them, and they would be resolved in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. And for the benefit of, I guess, everyone in the room, can staff share the recent changes to rental replacement and the right to return that have strengthened tenants, I think it was over the last year, that increased tenant protections and assistance, albeit, in my opinion, not enough, but have been some improvements. Can staff speak to those?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The rent gap assistance calculations have been changed considerably. So there will be greater assistance in terms of rent gap for tenants in situations where rent.
Can you share exactly how much the increase was, or roughly, or give an example, perhaps?
It would be currently, give me one moment, I have
Okay.
figures. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a ballpark estimate.
Sure, yeah, that's
So,
fine.
so what current figures now are that staff is using are vacant figures, and they are across the city. So to provide an example for 3-bedroom units, the rent gap would be the difference between current rents paid by tenants and three-bedroom units across the city, which is approximately 3,500. So the gap between that is what would be calculated on a monthly basis for tenants for support during the displacement period. That's something that council approved in the spring of this year.
And last question, how has been the support given to tenants to help find a new spot during this disruptive process?
We're also requesting, and as standard in our practice is to request a leasing agent. We're working with the applicant to inquire if they are aware of additional units, and we would require a leasing agent to support tenants once notice is provided.
Has the applicant been supportive of that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Canavelle. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers on this item? Councillor Canavelle?
Thank you, Chair. I joined this process towards, of course, the tail end coming in the start of the year, but my priority has always been to ensure transparency and accountability in local developments. One of our first meeting was at Scarborough Village Community Center in January, or perhaps it was late December, with tenants, the applicant, and their lawyers. We worked hard to get answers to outstanding questions, especially including tenants who were removed previously and got their readmission into their right to return. We also worked hard to get technical answers from engineering and water to address some of the planning engineering requirements, but as we heard, there are still outstanding matters that require diligent, thoughtful, meaningful responses, and my office and I are committed to providing that in the months coming, and especially in the lead up to the resolution of the OLT conditions. We worked hard to address tenants' concerns, ensure all voices were heard. Since the beginning of my term, I've emphasized the importance of upholding tenant concerns and rights. It's crucial that all stakeholders, especially residents, have a voice in these discussions, and to that I thank SEPA and the policy folks for helping address and meet with tenants and the developer to ensure their obligations were being fulfilled. I appreciate their responsiveness to our strong and the tenants' advocacy on these issues. But despite our efforts, there clearly remain certain ongoing questions and gaps in this process that will inform how we as a city respond and strengthen rental replacement policies, as well as our advocacy in relation to the provincial governments, which sets the framework for our processes. Addressing these issues should be a priority before we move forward with the decision, which will have an immense impact on the tenants, and this is where I'm supportive of answering the outstanding questions from the community's perspectives and requests as this moves forwards. Rental demolition applications are a very tough, emotional, and disruptive process. I don't think any of us would envy or would understand or would appreciate if a similar process came to our own lived reality and personal lives. And I think it's something that allows us to reflect on how we as a city form policy and how we position our relationship with the provincial government, which creates the framework, the legal framework for these situations. So it's a tough question that I think begets all of our collective response to address the fundamental question of how do we maintain existing affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Canavelle. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, so we have the motions before us. All in favor? The recommendation, sorry. And that carries. Sorry? You want a recorded vote? Okay. Councillor Canavelle wants a recorded vote. All in favor? Councillor Thompson, Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Myers, Councillor Mantas, Councillor Ainsley, and opposed? Councillor Canavelle. That passes. Okay. Our next item is SC 15.2, 27 and 29 Park Crest Drive, official plan amendment and zoning amendment decision report approval. We have two registered speakers. The first is Paul Rogers. Paul Rogers here or online? Okay, not online. Paul Rogers. Going once. Paul Rogers going twice. Paul Rogers 3 times. Not here. The next speaker is Peter Smith from Bose Fields Incorporated. Is he online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Smith, you have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Smith. I'm a land use planner and a partner at Bousefields. We've been involved on behalf of the applicant with the application from the outset. And what I'd like to do today is just very quickly to, first of all, thank staff for their involvement throughout this process. This was definitely, it was a long process. It was about 18 months or so from the time of application. The result was, I think, a much better development that responded in particular to concerns that had been raised by urban forestry regarding changes to grade, loss of trees, and so on. And the design was significantly revised to address their concerns as well as concerns raised by city planning and urban design. And I think we all feel that the final result is a much better result as a result of all of those efforts. Secondly, I wanted to thank Councillor Candeval, who has inherited this file partway through and has worked really closely with us and I think come up with ultimately a good solution. And I also want to thank him for, and thank the community for attending at a second community consultation meeting, which was sponsored by ourselves and the councillor that was held just last week on July 3rd. I just want to thank the community for all of the thoughtful input that was provided and for coming out to a second meeting and taking part in the process. I believe there may be a motion to address visitor parking. I can say that we've worked with the councillor's office and with staff on that, and we're supportive of both the staff recommendation and in the staff report, as well as the proposed change to the visitor parking requirement. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and just want to thank everybody again for their efforts throughout. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Questions of the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We'll take it into committee for questions of staff. Any questions of staff?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Speakers? Sorry, questions of staff. No, you missed your opportunity. Too late. You got to pay attention. Questions of staff? Councillor Candeval?
Thank you. For the, I know these are questions that we spoke to at the committee, the community meeting. On the concern regarding, so we have, for those unfamiliar with the file, on current 2 large family lot homes, we have a series of stacked, I guess is the term for townhouses coming, 115 of them. The concern about the obvious increase in traffic coming out of Parkrest onto Kingston Road. Can we confirm during site plan approval we can address the need, should there be one, to have a right-only turn? So in allowing both a left turn at the signal light and a right-only turn.
Through the chair, Councillor, you mean from the site driveway itself?
Yes, from Parkrest onto Kingston Road. Is that where we would address those concerns?
I would have to defer to my colleagues in Transportation Services, but that is within the control of site plan. So if it's warranted and necessary, it can be addressed through site plan control.
And would the costs relative to those changes be addressed through that process as well?
Any securities necessary for signage or site construction would be secured through site plan control, yes.
Okay, thank you. The other concern that was raised by residents at the community meeting, given that these are family-sized units, we're seeing 100-plus families coming in, there isn't any direct park amenity However, there's an application, we understand, that may involve that dedication. Can staff share the details of that?
Yes, through the chair, through a previous approval of City Council, Parkrest comes south from Kingston Road and splits to Parkrest Drive and Annis Road. And there's a parcel almost immediately kitty corner to the subject lands, which will dedicate a small parkette, which is yet to be programmed. That proposal is in for site plan control, so I'm assuming that it will be constructed, and that's a very short walk, literally just crossing the street to a new city park.
There's also, finally, the discussion along Parkrest between a sidewalk and the existing country-style ditch, which is the preference of the community. Can that be addressed and resolved and maintained at the site plan approval?
Through the chair, the rural cross-section, like the no curb and culvert?
Yeah, the ditch.
It could be addressed through site plan control. However, engineering standards, current engineering standards would have to be adhered to. I would need to defer to my colleague in ECS about what would be the requirement as it relates to building the boulevard back.
Mm-hmm.
So we will also work with transportation colleagues through Mr. Chair that we have enough space there, and we just design the sidewalk and the walkways accordingly so as to provide a pedestrian access there.
Sorry, a sidewalk is being designed?
Yeah, so we will work with transportation based on the needs of the pedestrians.
Right.
So we will figure it out if something is needed, sidewalk is needed or widening.
Right,
So
but that decision is not necessarily being made with today's approval. That can be determined at site plan?
yes, all these are site plan matters.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers? Councillor Campbell?
I believe I've shared with clerks a motion or amendment to address visitor parking. There were many concerns shared at our community community meeting last week. It's a bit of a blur, July 3rd. And I appreciate the applicant bringing an entire team of 9-10 consultants, engineers, architects, the applicant himself to address the questions with the community at the Scarborough Village Community Center in a very thoughtful, meaningful way. One of the biggest concerns was the need for visitor parking for the 115 units. As a result, we are now having a modification that ameliorates those concerns to some extent. 115 families with 7 visitor parkings was a clear concern, which would result in the potential of having neighbors to this site impacted. I think this modest increment to 15 helps address those concerns and alleviate any potential tension that may arise. So we're hopeful this will address that and moving this motion to that accord.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Campbell. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, so we have the amendment before us by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? That's unanimous, that carries. Item is amended, all in favor? That's unanimous, that carries. Thank you very much. Our next item is SC 15.3, 565 Kennedy Road, Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Decision Report for Approval. We have one registered speaker, Mr. Greg Ewens. Mr. Ewens, you have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee. My name is Greg Ewens from Batory Planning and Management. I'm here on behalf of the owners of 565 Kennedy today. I'd like to just start by thanking staff, specifically Tommy Karapalevsky, Renrick Ashby, and Christian Ventresca as well for their hard work on this file. We greatly appreciate their collaborative efforts and approach, and appreciate their supportive report, which is before you today. The project before you replaces a one-story motel with surface parking, with 113 new residences in a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, in a 9-story building with new ground floor commercial space and public space improvements which activate both streets. It's a corner lot. And 1 underground parking level with a total of 32 parking spaces. Ordinarily, I would not speak on a deferral if I believed that the added time would assist us in responding to city or community comments. In this case, we've looked at opportunities to provide additional parking to address some of the comments, and it does not appear that that it is feasible to do so for a number of reasons. The site is located on Kennedy Road between 2 major transit junctions, Scarborough Junction to the south, Kennedy Station to the north. Kennedy is a critical connecting spine between these 2 areas, and as such, the city recently released an updated map of the avenues designations, which includes this stretch of Kennedy Road, indicating it's an area for further development in the future. But the proposed building at 9 stories creates a good one-to-one relationship with the right-of-way of Kennedy. To try to address shadow concerns which came up from the community at the consultation meeting we had a couple of months back, the building is set back 10 meters from the east, and the residence is there, which is more than required by the mid-rise guidelines of the zoning. There's a further 4 meter step back at the 4th story as well. With regard to concerns about parking, we greatly exceed the parking rates in the council adopted bylaw approved in 2022. We're providing 4 times the amount required by the zoning bylaw. A total of 8 spaces are required. We're proposing 32. We're also providing 114 bike parking spaces, and I note that there is a bus stop, 2 bus stops on either side of the street located immediately out front of the building for the 113 TTC bus, which connects up to Kennedy Station. We've looked at providing an additional level of underground parking in response to comments about parking. This would provide even more parking beyond the bylaw's requirements. We do not believe that adding a second level is practical or feasible due to the high water table in this area. It's challenging and costly from a construction point of view, and we're not sure the added parking would be absorbed by the market in this case either. It's something that we definitely have looked at in response to questions from staff and the councillor's office, who we thank for meeting with us this week and keeping an open door in conversation. Parking and mobility concerns can be challenging to address in some cases, and in this instance, the project is over-providing parking. It's facilitating a range of opportunities for residents and visitors to utilize all modes of transport in accordance with provincial and city objectives. It's a site on a major street. It's likely a future avenue with good access to transit, amenities, schools, parks, and on. It's an area where the city intends growth to occur, and that growth has to be scaled and designed with regard for the local community, and that's what I believe we've done here, improving public space, improving community space, providing a greater variety of housing. We're happy to be here today along with a supportive staff report, and again, I would like to thank planning staff, and I would like to thank the councillor's office for working with us on this file and being available to chat this week leading up to this meeting. It is greatly appreciated to make sure we had a good dialogue coming up to this. Thank you all for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ewens. Any questions of the deputant? No questions of the deputant? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Questions of staff on this item? No questions of staff. Speakers on this item? Councillor Canavelle.
Yes, I'll be moving deferral.
Do you have a date you want to defer?
Clerk has it,
Okay.
September.
Staff have it?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is on the screen to defer this item until September 19th, 2024 meeting, moved by Councillor Canavelle. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none. Speaker, sorry. All in favor of the amendment? That carries. Item is amended. All in favor? That carries. Sorry, I don't need to move it. Item is amended. Got into a groove. All right, our next item is SC 15.519 Felicity Drive, application to remove a private tree in Ward 24. We have one registered deputant, Allison Line. Morning, Ms. Line. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready. And maybe if you want to pull the microphone down a little bit. Somebody pull it up. There we go. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Allison Lyon. My husband, Laurie Lyon, cannot be here today. He was going to speak because he just had emergency bypass surgery. First of all, I wish to thank the council for this opportunity to address you today regarding item SC 15.5 on the agenda, specifically a request to remove a private tree from our property. I will try to make my remarks mercifully brief and within the 5 minutes. In 2007, with an eye on the inevitability of aging, my husband and I, both just shy of 60, decided to focus on obtaining a bungalow and to create a residential environment that would offer comfort and safety in our most senior years. With this in mind, we sold our two-story house in the Bluffs, where we had resided for 32 years. That sale eliminated, among other things, stairs in a large lot that was labor-intensive. In the summer of 2007, we purchased 19 Felicity Drive, a bungalow in Scarborough built on the site of the old Cedar Brae Golf Course, with an eye on our future. And we completely gutted the house and undertook a full renovation to accommodate any reservations we would have. Naively, our enthusiasm in obtaining 19 Felicity blinded us, both my husband and me, to ignore the presence of a towering coniferous tree on the front lawn. Unbeknownst to us, this was a non-native species, specifically an Austrian pine. In subsequent conversations with more than one arborist, we were to learn this species of tree is not recommended for residential properties. In fact, the City of Toronto does not plant this tree. We were soon to learn why this tree is not recommended. We had been aware of the many challenges and the threat this tree would present. We would not likely have bought the property. Yes, it has been that much of a hassle. On the day we took possession of 19 Felicity, the neighbor next door joined us on the lawn to introduce herself, and on the heels of brief introduction, she pointedly asked, "What do you plan on doing with the tree?" Having given no thought to the tree, we were taken aback by her question. Our reply was, "What do you mean? What do we plan on doing with the tree?" The neighbor was unsparing. In her condemnation of the tree, we were told that for decades the tree had an adverse effect on her property, and she earnestly wanted to see it gone. We were soon to discover why. Immediately after closing, this nuisance tree greeted us with fist-sized pine cones that littered our lawn and the neighbor's driveway, the chestnut-sized gobs of sap that dotted her driveway and our lawn and our roof, and the 7-inch needles that choked the eaves and downspouts on her house and ours, this despite the existence of gutter covers on their eaves and ours. The tree should never have been planted so close to the houses 40 years ago. The neighbor made us aware that because a large portion of the tree overhangs her driveway and roof, her and her husband have for decades been unable to park their cars in the driveway. And in 17 years since we've lived there, this non-native nuisance tree has been nothing short of a headache. Gobs of sap have prevented my husband and me, our grandchildren and pets, from enjoying our lawn. Our walkways are covered in sap and pineapples. If we're not careful, we track it into the house. After every rainstorm, we get this deluge of pine cones, and I'm picking up buckets full every week. This non-native nuisance tree has basically sabotaged one of our main reasons for moving, that being to reduce our outdoor maintenance as we age. Dealing with the removal of the needles and eaves and pine cones from the lawn has been an endless task. In previous years, my husband able to climb a ladder to unblock the eaves and downspouts, but at 76, and his surgery, he no longer can do that. Needles in the eaves not removed by winter hold snow and water, which freezes to produce ice dams, and these ice dams back up under our shingles and have caused leaks in the house. There was worse to come. The threat presented by this nuisance tree to the safe environment of our property was never more evident than an event occurred in 2020, and that's when I twisted my ankle on one of the pine cones, ended up with a fork break, serious health and safety issue. To get permission to remove the tree, we applied to the city's Office of the Ravine and Natural Feature Protection, whose blessing one must obtain. Included on our request was the requisite arborist's report, plus we added the photos of the tree and all the gutter buildup. The Ravine and Natural Feature Protection Office made no effort to contact us again to further insight into why we wanted to get rid of the tree, nor were we told whether someone from the office would come by to view the tree and discuss the issue. The process was cloaked in secrecy. Their communication with us was almost non-existent. Finally, in an email correspondence sent to me on February 16, 2024, the Office of the Ravine and Natural Feature Protection denied our request to remove the tree, a decision they arrived at despite not providing us an opportunity to outline the reasons why we wanted the tree gone, nor did the office provide us with any of their arborist reports. Instead, they offered the galling bromide, and I quote, "The tree can be expected to provide a diversity of benefits to the site." My husband and I would have been appreciative of some explanation of this diversity of benefits, a list perhaps that might convince us to ignore
Sorry,
the
Ms.
threat.
Lang, could I ask you to wrap up, please?
Yes, 2 seconds. That might convince us to ignore the threat to our safety and reasonable enjoyment of our property that this tree has inflicted on both of us and our neighbor. It's a cost of $5,000, not unlike something, but we would do it. In closing, let me say that my husband and I understand the desire of the city to regulate the cavalier removal of trees that offer benefits and health and beauty to our homes. Toronto does not suffer a shortage of trees. In consideration of our request, I wish to ask this question to Scarborough Council. Is it reasonable that a city bylaw should choose to protect a non-native nuisance tree over the health and safety of aging seniors, desirous of remaining in their home for as long as possible? My husband and I wish to be granted, not unreasonably, permission to remove this blight on our lives and our aging neighbors. Once again, I thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lyon. I appreciate you coming in this morning and your comments. Any questions of the deputy? Seeing none. Sorry, can I just ask, was this tree there before you bought your house?
Yes, and it was a mature tree, but the branches hadn't gone over the roofs to the extent they have now. It's just continued to grow, and now it's completely covering the front roof of our house and the side roof of the neighbors, and also 2/3 of their driveway and most of our front lawn.
And so
And I'm guessing at 40 years, it could have been longer.
Yeah, and so in the report that we have from us, I guess you hired an arborist and they submitted a report saying
Yeah,
there's issues with the tree, and my forestry staff,
yeah.
the city's forestry staff, I'll say mine, went out and looked at it, and they basically conflict with what your arborist said. And one of their comments was that the tree, if it could be pruned more, there is deadwood evident, but if it was pruned, that would help as well. Do you get it pruned on a regular basis?
We've had it pruned more than once, but it's at the point now where arborists feel that if they prune it anymore the way it's grown, it will cause an unbalanced tree, and it will definitely fall on our neighbor's roof and their driveway. And we also have a wind situation that happens at the side of the two houses that make this tree unstable. And all the growth is at the top, and it waves like crazy in high winds, and the root system is extremely shallow. So our arborists feel they can't prune it anymore without causing severe possibility of it coming down.
Okay. And then, do you have gutter guards on your east troughs?
Yes, we do, on all of our east troughs, and basically, we have them cleaned as much as we can, but what happens is, after every rainstorm, after every wind in the winter, it has to be done on almost a weekly basis.
Okay, all right. And I guess the other difficulty we're having on this side of the room is our tree law protects trees over 30 centimeters in diameter.
Yeah.
And this one's 63 centimeters in
Yeah.
diameter. And trees also have not only benefit you as a homeowner when they shade your house, but
Yeah.
they also provide a lot of community benefits, and
Yeah.
this is a big tree.
Well, and to be honest with you, all our boulevards at the front have large trees, and we have 2 large trees in our backyard that have a diameter of 63 centimeters. So it's not like we're not surrounded our whole house and our neighborhood with the trees.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in this morning. We're now going to turn it over to questioning of staff. Any questions of staff from my colleagues? Councillor Mantis?
Looking at this tree, how much carbon does it sequester? How many trees would have needed to be planted to sequester the same amount of carbon as this tree would, or does?
I don't think I can answer that question specifically because I don't know how much tree that carbon sequests, but on average, this tree is located in the ravine bylaw area, and so all trees of all sizes are protected. And we have a pilot project going on right now for planting, where we're trying to establish a more scientific, ecological planting compensation than over the private tree bylaw. So in our mind, it's about 6 trees, new trees, would be the equivalent of the carbon sequestration for this one tree based on its diameter.
So could we say that at this moment, the application would be, as the report says, the application is denied, but in the future, if this new bylaw or pilot project goes through, then the applicant could apply again with the new, I guess, restrictions or in the new bylaw or pilot project?
Well, no. So the application was denied, and if we had approved the application, they would require to plant 6 trees as compensation. So now, if you decide to allow the tree to be removed, we request that the applicant plants at least 6 trees. So yeah, the decision would be to council, to community council.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Mantis. Other questions of staff? Councillor Myers?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just so I understand, it doesn't matter that this is a non-native species in terms of our decision, or should it matter?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, it shouldn't matter that the tree is not a native species, but it's also not an invasive species. This tree, Austrian pine, it comes from Europe and Asia, and it was highly planted in the Toronto area in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. This particular tree was probably planted around 1960 to 1965. So it's between 60 and 70 years old. It's healthy, so I think in this case, I wouldn't consider that it's not whether it's a native species or not in this case, because there's a manicured tree in a front yard. It's not actually in a naturalized area of the property.
Thank you. And I guess, what is the expectation of homeowners when they purchase trees that are, I guess, become a nuisance or just require a lot of upkeep? Like, what can be reasonably expected from homeowners when, I mean, I don't think they anticipated this when they bought the house. They just saw a tree. And then when they started to actually understand what was required with the maintenance, it might have been a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, when you purchase a property and with trees on it, it's like you have to maintain your roof, your house, you got to maintain your windows, your cladding, your driveway, your grass, and I guess the expectation is also you would have to maintain your trees. Trees normally require pruning every 5 years to 10 years to maintain your health. I think if a tree is in poor condition or it's dropping branches on a monthly basis or something like that, I think that becomes excessive at that point. And then as a homeowner, you can apply to the tree if the tree is protected, and we would take that under consideration for removal of a tree that was in poor condition or had excessive maintenance requirements. But that's not the case with this tree.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Myers. Questions of staff on this item? Seeing none? Sorry, I just wanted to ask, so while it's a non-native tree, it's not an invasive tree. like a Norway maple, I'll throw out there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, correct. It's a tree that comes from Europe and Asia, but it's not an invasive species, so it has no impacts to the native ravine in the area.
And an Austrian pine tree, so this is 63 centimeters in diameter. I believe the applicant said she's had the house for 40 years. What's the life expectancy of a Austrian pine tree?
Well,
Is this an old one at 60?
it can't. Yeah, no. So the average age in Europe is about 400 years. There's a specimen in Germany called the Four Brothers that is 1,000 years old. I don't expect them to live that long because they've been naturalized here. Maybe half that age. It's possible. In an urban environment, it could be less, but you would at least expect 100, it could be 120 years for such a tree. And this tree is like 60 to 70 years old, so it still has a lot of life left if it's kept healthy.
Okay. And then the applicant's arborist said that it's leaning towards the house and could be a problem. And sorry, was it you that went out and looked at it, or one of your staff?
No, it was one of my staff, and they did a report. I read the report, so the tree actually is leaning away from the house slightly, and the lean is caused by phototropism, which is just a fancy word meaning it's growing towards the sun. And so that's just a natural growth pattern because Austrian pine, as all pines, they're intolerant of shade, and they love growing towards the sun. So when the tree was planted in the 60s, it was small, the house was shading it, and so it just grew at a slight angle. It's got absolutely no impact to the structural integrity of the tree.
All right. And then you said there's also a comment about trimming that your staff think of the applicant. So she's saying, her arborist is saying if the trim the tree, I need more coffee. It's going to be a detriment to the tree and it could fall on the house. And your staff are saying, in their professional opinion, if she has it trimmed, there's no threat, but as long as an adequate amount of dead wood is removed.
Yeah, that's correct. So the tree has a small amount of dead wood. It's also got a tiny little bit of diplodia, which is fungus, but it's just under normal maintenance, it can be pruned, and the tree can be healthy and continue growing. And it can absolutely be pruned. It won't have any impact to the structural integrity of the tree. This tree is actually a little bit under average of height based on its diameter, and it's got a compact crown. So there should be no issues with wind or anything like that, or structural stability if the tree is pruned.
Okay. And then I know the forestry department has their thick book called Every Tree Counts. And so when we talk about community benefits of a tree, and Councillor Mantis alluded to, if this tree came down, you'd have to replace it with 6 trees to get that same amount of carbon benefit. Is that like 6 full-size trees, or like how many trees do you have to plant to get them to a height or growth to match what this tree does for the neighborhood, in your opinion?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in my opinion, I mean, in order to match the crown of this tree, you'd probably have to plant tens or dozens, possibly even 50 trees to match exactly the carbon sequestration that the tree is providing now. But we've decided that as for future growth of trees, 6 trees, they could be anywhere from 30 or 40 mil caliper to 50 mil caliper trees, like the kind of standard trees that are planted on the street or in a ravine. Those would be the equivalent, and in the future should increase the canopy in the city for this tree and more trees, because we're trying to increase canopy.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions, and seeing others. Speakers on this item? Nobody? Sorry, so I'm going to speak. I'm going to move the recommendations in the report. Ms. Lyon, I'm sorry, I know you and your husband aren't going to be happy with that, but we've been doing a lot of work at the city around climate change and protecting neighborhoods, and this is a very large tree. I'm going to side with my staff that it's a healthy tree, that it's actually leaning away from your house, and it does provide a lot of community benefits. And maybe if you could look at trimming it more. I know you have gutter guards on your house, but I think the benefits of this tree to both yourself and your neighbors far outweigh cutting it down and then trying to replace it with a number of trees, which the number of trees you would have to plant on your property to replace it, I don't think is a viable option either. So I'm going to move the recommendations in the report that the tree be kept in its place. And seeing that, so I'm moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? And that carries, and that passes. Thank you very much. And then our last item is SC 15.15, 1161 Kingston Road, construction staging area in Ward 20, held by Councillor Cannavale. Councillor Cannavale, questions of staff? Where would Councillor Cannavale? Councillor Cannavale? Councillor Cannavale, going once. Councillor Cannavale, we're on SC 15.15, 1161 Kingston Road, construction staging area. Questions of staff? No. No questions of staff? Would you like to speak?
I'd like, yes.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Clerks, if they can put it on.
Nancy, do you have the motion?
Staff supported amendment, to September 15th, which was requested by
Okay.
staff, contrary to our previous September 30th. So.
All right. Sorry, what's the intent of this? Just moving it forward?
Yeah.
Or move?
Yeah. Moving it forward and gives us the time to work with the applicant and transportation services and the applicant to ensure this is causing a huge bottleneck on Kingston Road. This will give us 2 months to have different mitigation strategies with signal timings and other measures to see if they work. And before we go into the year-long permit, we need to have due diligence. So this will give us, giving them the temporary permit before we go into a longer one.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any other questions of the mover? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment?
No. Hold on. Sorry. No.
Okay, we're just gonna pause for a moment.
Yes, thank you, staff, for picking up on the year mistake. Yep, should read 2024, not 2025. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, so the, okay, all right. Okay, all in favor of the amendment? That carries. Item is amended. That carries. Madam Clerk, I believe we're done. Okay. Okay, we have bills. Nobody go anywhere? Deputy Mayor McKelvey, would you like to move the bills?
Thank you. That Bill 715 to 721, prepared for the July 12th, 2024 meeting 15 as Scarborough Community Council, be declared as bylaws and passed subject to Section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act, 2006.
Thank you. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none, all in favor?
Thank you for that.
That carries. Councillor Myers, would you like to move this confirmatory bills?
That confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 15 on July 12th, 2024 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
Thank you. Any questions of the mover? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Cannavale, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to all the staff, and I hope everybody has a great weekend.
And summer in August.
Till our next meeting in August. Thank you, everybody.